Hello again. I apologise to those of you for whom this is the third time you get to see me on stage today. This one's a bit shorter than the others, so there's some good news. You've got me to do the first 10, and then Ryan's going to be coming up to do the second 10. And then we were going to be doing a Q&A with Amy Africa. Obviously, that's not now happening. So we're going to do a Q&A between ourselves and hopefully with the help of all of you on the subject of probably advertising and analytics, we're thinking. But we'll see how that goes when we get through the 20 things. So please do start thinking about some questions as we go through. So as you probably have already worked out by now today, I'm Chloe Thomas. I run e-commerce master plan, where I focus on helping people like yourselves make the right decisions in their business, predominantly around marketing strategy and business strategy in the e-commerce space. But I did start off running catalogue mailings for pastimes, so I am offline friendly. I'm not a digital purist. Those up on the screen there, you've got my latest book, Customer Persuasion, that came out last year, the e-commerce master plan podcast, which every week I put out another interview with an e-commerce retailer, everything from companies as big as Tesco down to people who only started a few weeks ago. There's always something interesting in there. And then the one in the middle is the Get More Customers Club that I launched a month ago, but you can find out about that on the website if you want to know more. So my 10, number 1. Make sure you have the bases covered. Now, hopefully, all of you are going to get to feel smug about the fact you're covering the key sales-driving channels in e-commerce. But as someone who gets to see behind the scenes in lots of e-commerce businesses, I know, weirdly, that is frequently not the case. This is data from Custora, who collate the traffic to multiple e-commerce retailers. And this is their November 2016 data, the biggest month of the year in e-commerce. And essentially, email is the number 1 sales driver. PPC is your second at 19% of traffic, of orders rather, and organic is the third, and then direct comes in, just see it down the bottom there, at 20%. So please make sure you're doing something on direct, organic, pay-per-click, and email. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because I don't want to embarrass those who aren't, but please make sure you've got those bases covered. My second point then, we are going to be running through these fairly quickly this afternoon, is think email sign up first. We've heard a lot today about how it's becoming more competitive and more tricky to get that first order. We had Kevin talking about the importance of focusing on getting that first order. Well, I think there's a lot of space to play on making sure you get the email sign up from the person who comes to your website, rather than purely focusing on trying to get a sale out of them. I know lots of businesses who are getting 5 to 8% of visitors to sign up to their emails and are getting conversion rates from their email marketing that follows on from that in excess of 20%. So this is well worth focusing on. This is one of my favourite email sign-ups because it's so rich in opportunity for the customer. And I'm not mentioning GDRP at this point. You've had probably enough of that already today. Number 3, Facebook lead ads, rather much the same theory. This is a client of mine who are getting 100 sign-ups a day from Facebook lead ads. This is where you pay for an email sign-up on the Facebook platform. They're paying less than £1 per email sign-up, and they're converting 20% of those into buyers over a 6-month period. It's a pretty cool business model if you can get it to work. It does take a little bit of optimization, of course. So give Facebook lead ads a go. Gender split your Facebook ads. The most powerful thing in a Facebook ad is the image. It's worth about 75 to 90% of the response. And men and women react very differently to different images. So you should be optimizing the images in your Facebook ads, which means gender splitting your campaigns. Of course, if you get exactly the same results, then by all means merge them back in together, but I think I'd be surprised if you do. Number 5, social proof. I love a bit of social proof. You all know that from this morning. Social proof is essentially the neuromarketing truism that if you see someone else doing it, you are considerably more likely to do it yourself, which means things like customer reviews, X number of customers bought from us, awards, we're the largest supplier of this, anything which shows that someone else has got trust in you. It could be a write-up in a magazine. All those things are really powerful ways of convincing people to buy from you. These are the start of 2 examples from Snake Hive's welcome campaign, their email welcome campaign. They are a mobile phone cover retailer. They have my current favourite email welcome campaign out there. And these are 2 emails that anyone can copy. The first is an email which is all full of customer reviews. They've just picked 5. That's all that's in the email is, here's how much our customers love us. And then the one on the right is just some press quotes. read all about how much the press love us. Really simple ways to deploy social proof that will have a positive impact on your sales. Number 6, listen to the customer absolutely everywhere. So I don't mean just listening in to people who are calling in on the phones. I mean looking at what the customer is telling you about your products, about the pages on your website, about your emails and what they respond to, listening to everything they do. This is an example of a live chat pop-up on a website called Wink Beds in America. This is a brilliant thing to do if you've got a page that's performing poorly on your website and you don't know why. Lots of people are exiting or lots of people are bouncing. Deploy something like this to ask them a specific question about what's going on, to find out what the problem is with the page on your website. There are so many ways to listen to your customer, but it really is essential these days to make sure that we're developing our businesses based on what they want, not what we think we want. I heard the guys from Shop Direct who run very.co.uk, they have a mantra in the business, which is don't listen to the hippos. The hippos being the highly paid opinions. So it's not about what the boss thinks, sorry to the bosses in the room, it's about what the customers think. Number 7, harness your influencers. Whether they're the Instagrammers, whether they're the bloggers, newspapers, magazines, whoever the influencers are, it's a really, really powerful way of growing the brand reputation of your business and directly bringing customers in. Wink Beds, who I mentioned earlier, got themselves to a 7-figure turnover selling mattresses in America purely with an influencer marketing strategy. This works wonders. Number 8, think about your promotions. This very much comes back to the example Kevin Hillstrom gave this morning about the company who launched some new products that weren't selling, so they discounted everything, even the previous bestsellers, which is crazy. So I frequently use this mantra, which is every promotion you run should get the customer to do what you want them to do as cheaply as possible. So if you've got some stock that's not shifting, just destroy your margin on that stock, don't destroy it on everything. So think really carefully about those promotions by channel, by customer, by product, everywhere you're running them. Okay, so my 9 and 10 are from today, because I thought I'd set myself the challenge of finding 2 awesome things from other people's presentations to bring you as top tips. The first one of which is a bit of a mixture of bits from, and they're both from Kevin Hillstrom's presentation, which I thought was awesome. My number 9 was, he was talking a lot about getting creative and getting away from the numbers, and I think that's such an important thing, to do something creative in your business. I think I can see Martin Harvey over there, can I? Hello. Martin's emails about muck munchers, which in many people's eyes would be a truly boring product about doing things with your septic tank. His emails are awesome. Get yourself on his list and see the crazy stuff he's sending out there. It's getting creative and it's getting the customers involved. And then, who wouldn't like that? £1 for every single open on the email he last sent out. So, well, we're taking. Yeah, and his emails don't even sell. So, yeah, right. I'm looking at that one. And then, okay, finally, then number 10 was about the need to focus for me on. I'll start that sentence again. My number 10, and I think one of the most interesting things I've heard today, was when Kevin was saying about we need to be focused on new customer acquisition. And I, along with many of you, am quite guilty of saying we need repeat purchase sequences, we need post-purchase sequences, we need this, that, and the other. But actually, if we look at the stats in the way Kevin was advising us to, by actually looking at how much we're paying and can we manage to recruit profitably if we look outside the world of Facebook and Google, and in some cases, in that classic sailing example, Facebook itself, can we do that profitably? And if we can build a business doing that profitably, then maybe we just let a couple of email sequences look after our repeat purchase. So that's really got me thinking. And on my long journey back to Cornwall tonight, that's what's going to be occupying my thoughts. So that's my 10. It's now time to bring, and if anyone wants to quickly get a picture of those, they're there. So it's now time to get Ryan up to give us his 10, and then I'll be back up to do a bit of a Q&A with you all shortly.
Hello everybody, we'll just wait for my slides to come up. I'll introduce myself while that happens. I'm Ryan Webb and my job title is Conversion and Analytics Director at SearchStar. I'll touch upon some tips that fall outside of those categories as well, but fundamentally I focus on improving the conversion rates of our clients' websites. Thank you for Chloe. She's obviously stepped in several things today, so I think she's come up with far more than 10 tips across the course of the sessions that she's run, so appreciate that. I've also tried to expand upon what I originally had planned for this session, and I've tried to adapt to the discussions that have gone on throughout the day as well, so hopefully I can feed back into some of the things that have been mentioned. The first thing I'll do, though, is take the opportunity to do my little sales pitch. I noticed everybody else had a 2-second sales bit at the beginning, so I'll just cover off that as well. But this is purely to give context to where my point of view is coming from. I am a digital purist in my role now, although I did come from a direct marketing background, so I do know what a package insert is. I do know what a net name is. So I have that understanding of offline direct commerce as well. But now focused entirely on digital, though we still work with other agencies, obviously, that complement those channels and those skill sets. So we're called Search Star because we focus in the top of the compass there in paid search. Our founder set us up about 15 years ago purely as an Google AdWords consultancy, and we've expanded from that. So we consult and optimize the other channels for clients as well, handily doing that new customer acquisition piece. So anybody who is struggling with that, then obviously we're ready and available to help you out. The bit that I focus on is at the bottom of the compass there, really. So my team, we do training for clients, we do conversion rate optimization, like I said, and we do analytics, all different variations of project work, consultancy, and hopefully you'll see where the sort of that takes us in the tips that I'm going to take you through now. So the first one I've got is actually one that's related a little bit more to the paid search and Google Shopping end of things, and that is quite a simple one really, but it's something that Chloe touched upon earlier on in one of her other sessions as well, is that you need to be actually looking at where your ads are appearing against what search terms people are putting in, especially on Google, but other search engines do exist. And especially with Google Shopping, because with Google Shopping you don't actually have full control over where Google's going to be displaying your shopping ads. But this applies for AdWords, typical paid ads as well. So you or your search agencies need to be running something called a search query report, which basically is after the activity is run and Google has deemed your ads to be relevant for that search term and therefore shown it, you need to run the report. Although you may not have bid for these exact words, Google potentially has shown your ad against them. So you need to be looking at that, and in this particular case, that's a search query report. And we have a client of ours, when we took over the account, this wasn't after us managing it for a long period of time, this is one of the first things we identified. They had something called a smoker pipe, which I'm still not entirely sure what it is, but it's something that people use in their garden, I think, related to charcoal. And their ads were appearing against the search term for weed pipe, which I don't believe is quite the same thing. And they were spending a little bit of money against weed pipe, so we therefore, that's their ad showing, so we then negative keyword, put that in as a negative keyword and make sure that the ad doesn't appear against the search term weed pipe. Crack pipe was in there as well, and obviously a lot of other search terms as well across the whole of the account. So this is only an estimate, but we do see significant efficiencies, and in this particular case it was sort of 20 to 30% efficiency of the count based on just applying that principle to the activity. So it was quite phenomenal improvements we were able to uncover. So that's the first one, just a basic one for search activity really. The second tip from me is it kind of relates to this be creative element that's come out and try and be a bit different, but being slightly anal and loving data and numbers, I also think that you can do the two things together. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be creative and use data at the same time. So these are the sort of signals that are available to you to be making decisions about what creative you show to people when they see your ads. So you can be serving a different creative message based on what the time of day is, where that person is, whether they're a returning visitor or whether they're to your website, or whether they're a potential new visitor, how many pages they visited on your website previously. They're not necessarily on your website now, they are consuming content elsewhere, but you're serving an ad to them, so why not use these signals and feed that into the creative that you're serving them. The reason that I push this, I don't know how many of you have heard of a platform called Criteo, but Criteo is a well-known retargeting creative platform now that lots of online retailers use. And as good and as powerful as I've seen Criteo campaigns be, there's been a tendency for them to be oversimplified in my view and basically follow the old principles of that person came to my site, they looked at the Red Sox, they didn't buy the Red Sox, I'm going to follow them around the internet now for the rest of their lives, showing them an advert of Red Sox. And that's not best practice. There are all these other signals. You might maybe potentially try them with some Blue Sox. Maybe they didn't want the Red Sox. Maybe Blue Sox would be the ones that they will actually buy. And if you combine that with some of these other signals, you can make that creative much more impactful. I'll show you a quick video now as well. It's a double-click video, so it's one of these platforms that can actually do this, and hopefully this will help illustrate the techniques and ways that double-click can allow you to run that sort of creative. Oh.
DoubleClick Rich Media Dynamic Creative lets you set up campaigns with flexible content that you can change anytime without ever having to retraffic creatives. Use dynamic creative to optimize your campaign, retarget engaged audiences, and fine-tune messages on the fly. Dynamic creative makes it easy to target by audience, publishers, time of day, season, location, and more. With Dynamic, you can easily test different creative elements while making sure your best performing creatives automatically get better exposure. Dynamic Creative works alongside DoubleClick's full line of products, offering seamless integration with trafficking in DoubleClick Campaign Manager and targeting strategies in DoubleClick Bid Manager. With DoubleClick, you can design and deliver smarter and more efficient dynamic campaigns, helping you reach your goals without taking as many steps to get there. We offer solutions by industry vertical, highlighting best practices and common success metrics. No matter what industry you're in, or whether you use HTML5 or Flash, Dynamic Creative can help make your next campaign more successful. Get started today. Talk to your DoubleClick account manager or Rich.
Right, so just to quickly go back on that, DoubleClick is a very powerful platform, and you do need to have reasonably sized budgets to make that work and make that efficient for you. You don't have to go to that level though. So a lot of the tips that I've got today and the way that we approach things is to keep things simple. And I would argue that you can keep things much more simple than that as well, but don't just run obvious creative. Try and think and be a little bit more clever about it and segment and think about that message. So the third tip is to don't forget about speed. If you ever have any meetings with people like Google, you'll be continually reminded about this. Google have been shouting about mobile for years now, and they've stopped really shouting about mobile because hopefully everyone appreciates the importance of mobile now. But actually the speed element is still the key thing that's lagging behind. I believe that there was a survey done recently that said that over 50% of people said that they'll leave a website if it doesn't load within 3 seconds. We've done studies ourselves, and there have been other studies that have been done to show that for sort of every second that your site takes to load, you're reducing your conversion rate by about 7%. So this is critically important. That's the research that I was talking about there. And if you need any help with that, this is either for yourselves or for your web developers, and I'll point you in the direction of those two tools. So they're both Google-related tools. One of them is called Page Speed Insights, and it essentially looks at the page, crawls the page that you point the tool at, and it will tell you, it will give it a score, tell you what it thinks that score is in terms of loading time. But better than that, it gives you a list of things that you should be doing with that page in order to improve the speed of it. So without having to understand what compressing JavaScript is or what caching a page means, you can give a list of things to your developer and say, here's a list of stuff, see how many of those you can tick off, and that will help improve things. The mobile tool, it's a similar sort of thing, but actually at the same time it actually gives you a score as to how mobile friendly your website is. So as much as we have to accept that Google is an important platform that we all have to use, so what they are judging your website to be like is obviously important. So the fourth tip that I've got for you is based on some comments earlier on in the day about we've had various things that have been said about how to improve a website, whether it be social proof or getting across a compelling headline message. So I thought this is something I've added in because I thought it would be of use. It's a landing page scorecard that we've put together, and it just breaks down a landing page into 6 different categories and allows you to look at that page with a little bit of objectivity. So you, as e-commerce people, you look at your website day in, day out, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to step away and view that page objectively. Hopefully a framework like this should help with that. You can go through these 6 categories. There's some prompt questions on there as well, and you'll start to understand, if not necessarily get to the ideal answer as to what you should be doing, you should hopefully be able to get a bit of an idea as to where you need to focus. So you can imagine that you might think, well, we've got a reasonably relevant headline on the page. It's fairly simple to use, but actually there's none of our USPs are on the page. We've not put anything on the page to say why we should be chosen as opposed to all of our competitors. And then you can start to piece together the priorities of what you should be focused on. And that landing page scorecard is available on that URL there as well, for instance, along with a blog post that we've put together to try and help illustrate it a little bit further. The 5th tip is about scarcity messaging. Now, I'm sure that most people here must have some element of scarcity messaging on their website. We've touched upon the psychology of some messaging in order to compel people to want to buy, that sort of sheep mentality. Well, this helps with that as well, but also adds that little element of urgency to it as well. So, and we know not only does it make people more inclined to buy there and then, but potentially it makes them more inclined to pay a little bit more for it as well. And there's lots of different ways that you can do this. I think these are all travel examples that I've seen previously, but I can tell you for a fact that one at the bottom there, where for a travel client of ours, we added the number of people, and this was genuine as well. I don't recommend doing any of this sort of in a mocked up way where you just have some random number generator, or how you always say that you've only got one product left in stock. This is all of this stuff. Do it genuinely, or don't bother. But this is, we quite simply worked with the web developers to come up with a counter that identified the number of people that were on the website searching for holidays at that time, and when was the last time that somebody booked that particular type of accommodation. And we A/B tested that, and we saw that had an uplift of about 5% on actual e-commerce revenue that came out of the back end. So that was a critical test that we saw was incredibly powerful for that client. Similar again in terms of getting messaging in front of people to compel them to go further down the funnel, but think about behavioral messaging. So if you go back to those signals that I said are available for dynamic creative, all of those signals and more are also available for you to be changing what messaging you're putting on your website. And that could be either on just the standard page itself, or kind of more simply, I think, in terms of adding a message to the page depending on at a later date, more dynamically basically. So the example I've got here is, again, it's another travel client, and what we did is we ran a survey, so one of the surveys like the one that Chloe mentioned earlier on, and we were trying to identify why people weren't going beyond the search results page, why they weren't booking a holiday, and it overwhelmingly came back that it was related to price. The client had no appetite to do any price testing. They didn't want to reduce the price. So we thought, well, what are other opportunities to help with this? And we thought, well, instead of the price, then what we're going to do is we're going to put some messaging in front of them that's going to explain to them why it's worth paying the price to buy this holiday compared to our competitors. And this loaded on a particular page to a particular segment of audience. So it was when we noticed there was an exit intent. So with these various tools, you can use these different behavioral signals. So it was when somebody showed they were likely to be leaving, so not booking, through this message in front of them. And again, this had about a 5% uplift in conversions through the funnel, just purely by putting this compelling messaging in front of people. Again, trying to keep things simple, there are incredibly simple tools you can use to do something like this. So one example would be something like a tool called Get Site Control. And Get Site Control allows you, it's a JavaScript plugin, you can deploy it via something like Google Tag Manager, and you can serve these sorts of messages. There's loads and loads of different signals that you can choose. We've had some great results with clients for day part stuff with this. For example, clients who don't have the same capacity at weekends, to serve a message at weekends to certain segments of people to tell them to do something different, whether it be to phone the call center or to change, or to basically come back again on Monday. And so that's an incredibly powerful tool. Then obviously there are much more complex, sophisticated tools, the sort of Adobe enterprise level platforms where you can do incredible stuff with this. But my advice would be just don't be scared about the huge, vast possibilities there are with these sorts of tools. Just keep things incredibly simple and try and find where there are those real opportunities for doing something at a more straightforward level. 7th tip from me is to continuously run conversion tests. So if you imagine you've got your website, everyone's now sort of used to this process of redeveloping their website. Lots of people don't like going through that process. It seems like a big process. It's quite a significant investment. You've got to start from scratch. You're going through, and it's a big migration through to a new website. Well, in between those times, you can be finding out a phenomenal amount by testing your existing website. Don't just lurch from one website to 2 years later the next. Do stuff in between to find what works better for you. And this is the most interesting screen grab I could think of putting up, basically. And it's a list of tests that we've come up with for one client. And we're continually running these tests, continually updating, continually rerunning them as well, because we don't always find positive results. Sometimes we find a negative result. Sometimes it just flatlines and there's no difference. So we have to consider those tests again and again. The key thing to think about is to come up with a solid testing hypothesis, though. So we're not just trying red instead of blue for no reason. We're not just changing the wording in the navigation like a client of mine wanted to do this Monday, and just have no reason for it whatsoever. Just woke up on Monday morning and thought that maybe that word would work better. The idea is to genuinely think about some reason, identify a reason why some behavior is happening on your website that isn't what you would expect it to be, and then come up with a hypothesis as to how you can change that behavior. That then feeds into become what you're going to test. 8th tip is to analyze zero search results. Now, this is something we started thinking about 6 months ago, and we've had some really, really interesting findings from this with the clients. So if you think about it, most e-commerce websites have got a search facility on them, and you can find all sorts of things from the search results in there, so you can identify what people are searching for. But what are people not searching for? What are people not finding when they're actually looking for it? So this is from Google Analytics. So it's set up as an event that we're tracking in Analytics, and we've got various events for this particular client, including a 404 return. So this is an extra tip. This is 8A, which is make sure you're identifying when people are triggering a 404 error on your site, because that will help you identify when it's not working properly. But also there's this one down here, which is no search result returned. So in this particular case, for this client, we had this was the list of searches that people have been putting in. This is just for one day, and the top one there is 4 people were searching for disposable cameras. So this is a party website where people go for children's parties, for hen parties, all that sort of stuff, and weddings. And we found within one day, I think this was on Monday this week, 4 people were searching for disposable cameras. They've never sold disposable cameras. They've never thought to sell disposable cameras. But now they're actually going to think about, they're going to leave this running for a little bit longer and see if it continues as a trend. But that's an opportunity for them to sell disposable cameras and potentially have a new product set. So that sort of thing hopefully feeds back into that thinking about product and merchandising. This is sort of data that you can run to identify those opportunities for changing your products slightly. Use the data from what people are doing on your site, understand what they're doing, and then feed that back into your thoughts about the merchandising. Number 9 is not to be afraid of cross-device tracking. So Chloe's mentioned it earlier on. Obviously, Kevin does a lot of number crunching in Excel and loves it. There's lots and lots of data available, and there are lots of joins to be had with this data. But again, you can keep these things simple. So we all know that this is a sort of journey that people are taking now because they've got multiple devices. They're doing things simultaneously as well. But there are some very simple things that you can do. So, for example, in AdWords, there is something that's just called a cross-device report, and you can actually just change the view of your results, and you can just see, well, how do my results actually look if I do take into consideration what's happened across those devices? And you might find that actually there is a campaign that you didn't think was hitting ROI, that actually when you take into account the fact that those initial results were being served on mobile, but then the people were buying on a different device, actually then it makes that campaign worth doing. So I'm not saying that you should need to think about running these reports day in, day out and consider cross-device and attribution and multi-channel continually, but you should at least have a dip into it every now and again and get a feel for what people are doing and how they're behaving on your site and in the journey towards your site. Number 10 is, again, I love Google, and this is Google Analytics, and this is enhanced e-commerce reporting in Google Analytics. Other analytics platforms have similar abilities to do this analysis, but it's a fairly new thing in Google Analytics. It's only been around sort of developing over the last 12 months. But what it allows us to do is, rather than just thinking about the performance of somebody coming in from a particular source and then whether they buy the product or don't buy the product, this is, well, what about that journey along the way? And not only does it allow us to really, really get under the skin of how the funnel's performing, so how different sources, what different traffic drivers, how do they perform along the funnel, what type of audiences get to certain stages and then don't move on. It allows us to really, really understand that and interrogate it. But also you can get some great understanding of product behavior in here. So you can tag up your funnel so you can identify, well, what are the products that get regularly put in the basket but then get removed from the basket again? Which are the ones that people seem to behave slightly differently based on the price that's shown? Not only that, but if you've tagged that up correctly, then you can be really clever in terms of your dynamic creative again, or your remarketing and audiences lists that you build, and you can then serve creative and target people according to the stuff that you've learned throughout the funnel. So that was number 10, but I've got an extra one for you as well. So this is added value, and this is driven a little bit because I felt Kevin was a little bit negative earlier on about looking at analytics and being reactionary with Google Analytics data, which I do agree with. I totally get what Kevin was talking about. But what we do as an agency is we're continually trying to stop our clients from just reacting, so not looking at the numbers at 9:30 in the morning and then expecting us to be pulling levers so that we see a different result come 10 o'clock. It's an ongoing optimization where, yes, we can do significant things, but we're trying to do control, test, and learn so that we properly understand what changes we're making. Also, we can do things where we join the dots. So we can join data together with customer lifetime value, other signals, other offline activity. And we can do that using something called Data Studio. So this is a new tool. This Data Studio is another Google tool, I'm afraid. But it's available for free. If you have Google Analytics on your website, then Data Studio is free to you. And it is a dashboard that sits alongside analytics. You can really easily plug analytics data into Data Studio. But not only that, you can pull in data from other sources as well and line them up alongside one another. You can produce dashboards that look a lot more friendly than the analytics interface does, but more importantly, you can bring really, really important KPIs to the surface really, really quickly. And there were a couple of reports that Chloe mentioned earlier on, for example, the sort of the landing page performance report in Google Analytics, and Chloe made a comment about but it's hidden 5 clicks down, as all the good Google Analytics reports are. Well, this is a way to get away from that. Is basically you can find those juicy reports that you really like, or more importantly, your finance director really likes, or whoever else it is, which other stakeholder in the business it is, and you can put them on the front page of your Data Studio report, and that landing page behavior report can be the first thing that you see every time you log into this, and it can be plotted against whatever date range you want. You can be segmenting it however you want, and you can allow it to be really easily manipulated in here as well. So you can then make sure that you're keeping an eye on that report and seeing what happens as you make changes to your site and to your other activity. We are using, I really, really advise that you take a look at this or tell your agency to have a look at this. It's because it's free, it's incredibly powerful, and we're now rolling these reports out across all of our clients at the moment because it's such a great way to get data and, more importantly, insight out of all the numbers that we have. So that was it from me. So Amy will come back up, Chloe come back up, sorry, and then we'll take some questions.
Okay, I think Ryan deserves a round of applause for that one, for starters. Okay, we've got 2 mics. I get to move around now. I've got quite a few questions for you. I've got a very quick one. First of all, you said Google Analytics Enhanced is what we should be using. How do we use it? How do we turn it on? Is it just a quick switch, or have we got to do something on the site?
So it's one of those ones which is it's a little bit ambiguous in Google Analytics because there is a tick box to say, I want enhanced e-commerce. You tick that box and nothing will happen because you do have to configure it as well. So so there is a little bit of configuration that's needed, which is essentially something that you need to do with a tag, which is either in Tag Manager, hopefully, if you've got it set up in Tag Manager, or your developer would have to do. And you have to then essentially identify certain things throughout the funnel. Basically, it's one of those things, the more time you invest in that setup, the more value you'll get out of it. But you have to say, here is where the product ID is on the page, here is the field that does X on this page. So you have to configure it properly.
And just to make this really annoying for anyone who doesn't like code, I'm assuming you have to be on Universal Analytics to be able to use enhanced e-commerce?
You do, yes.
And that's a full Google Analytics code on your website re-implementation, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to open it to the floor and see if anyone's got any questions for either of us, to be fair. And if not, I'm going to ask them of mine. So do we have any questions out there? Right at the back. I was considering bringing the microphone, but I'm not going to do it. Took me forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for tools possibly more cost effective, aside from Google Optimize?
You can't get it to work.
Did everybody hear the question okay? I'm guessing, if I can, I'm sure all of you could. Okay, cool. I'll let you answer.
Well, first of all, if you used Optimizely before, double check if you've got that account still, because was it? Okay, because that was very frustrating. But we still use Optimizely a lot for our clients at the moment, but that's a legacy thing because when they had the free version of the tool, they're still supporting that. So anybody who's got an Optimizely account can still use the tool for free. So for new clients, we're using Google Optimize, of course. VWO would be the Visual Website Optimizer would be the other one, which is sort of priced in the middle. They're trying to make that into a tool that does all kinds of things alongside and becomes a full conversion rate optimization suite. That's the one that I've used historically prior to using Optimize now. But I would say though that, to be honest, if you've been struggling to get the Google Optimize tag to work with your CMS, you'll probably struggle to get any of the tools to work with it because they all work in a very similar way, which isn't. I think so, I'm afraid, yeah. There's a bit of JavaScript that goes on the page and that JavaScript has to fire, so they're all pretty much the same.
Do we have any other questions? Wow, everybody's wanting to go and put on their frocks and get ready for the dinner, I can tell. Okay, I've got a question for you before, just to see if anyone warms up whilst we're asking this. So I used to own a marketing agency. I don't anymore. And when I owned a marketing agency, I got a lot of pushback as to, or constantly struggle with a debate of should someone be outsourcing or doing it in-house. So what, in terms of, and I'm meaning, in terms of kind of pay-per-click, so the Google and the Facebook work, at what point does someone decide to outsource it? At what point does someone decide to do it in-house? Because I think it's a big question I hear from retailers is, should I outsource this? Should I do it myself?
Yeah.
What should I be doing?
Well, obviously we think that, as an agency, we offer a specialist view it's difficult for an internal team to have access to the amount of tests, the amount of betas, just the amount of information generally that we get access to across all of our clients. But I also totally understand that it's perceived as being a risk that you're relying entirely on a third party. So we're actually seeing sort of a hybrid model becoming more popular now, especially for sort of medium to large scale clients with significant spend, where with various clients we're supporting an internal team. So it means there's an internal team that get to understand the business inside out, back to front, and they work with us and they get the benefit of us understanding the platforms and the betas. So that works really well. Otherwise, we just try and be flexible with the way that we work with clients. So we'll do things like we'll do a quarterly audit of an account and let somebody internally run it for 3 months and then come back and check in with us, and we'll have a review of it again. So I think there's definitely a balance to be had. And obviously you need to pay an agency as well, so you need to be spending a reasonable amount in order to be able to afford the agency. We try to be flexible to make that as accessible as possible, though.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Just about, I think, just about. So it's use an agency, but there's probably a model to suit you. So
Yeah,
shop around.
absolutely. You don't have to outsource it 100% and relinquish entire responsibility. There should be a way of having a balance. Yeah.
So for those with the small budgets for whom it would suck up too much of their budget to be paying agency fees, and they want to go it alone, because I know there's some of you in the audience, what would you suggest they start with? Because that's the thing, if you haven't got much budget, you can't spread it across Facebook and Google and keywords and remarketing and Criteo and dynamic ads and GSCs and all the rest of it. So where would you say a retailer should start?
Well, the proper answer would be that we'd think about who their target audience is, and therefore where their target audience spend a significant amount of their time. But in all likelihood, it will be Google AdWords and Google Shopping. That would be where people are actively searching for your product. You should want to put your product there, despite the fact you might not want to be giving Google the money. But that's always that seems to be the most logical and effective route for us. It's not whether you should be doing Google AdWords first. It's just to what scale you go with Google AdWords. Basically, it's a no-brainer to do it. It's just, do you do it in a sort of low level, or do you push it as far as you can?
And that's generally budget dependent, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're making great money there and you haven't spent all your budget, and Google wants more money and you can't afford to give it, then you might as well stay there before trying something else.
Absolutely, and margins. Maybe there's a certain product set where you can afford that because of the margin on those products, so you can therefore invest a little bit more and do something a bit more sophisticated with something like AdWords or Facebook, and maybe there's a different product set that you don't bid on because the margins are too tight.
Okay, cool. I'll accept that answer overall. We've got an urgent question from the floor there.
Not so urgent, but it's one of those things that come back. It's still around marketing costs. What's your views around channel attribution and new sort of attribution modeling techniques that sort of tend to avoid the last click focus and look at the whole set of contributions from different channels? Have you had any customers do that, and what's their take on it?
Wow, this is a big question for those of you at the back who might not have heard that, which is marketing attribution. Have you done it other than last click, and how does it work? I think, to paraphrase quite a bit. My opinion, and I'm going to jump up with this one first, is that you should track everything to the point where you spent the money. So you track 100% back into Google AdWords, you track 100% back into email, you track 100% back into Facebook. And you use that for your day-to-day optimization, because quite frankly, anything else will start driving you crazy. But that maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, every month, depending on the volume of traffic you've got going through, you actually take a view as to how much overlap you've got going on, and you change your ROI criteria accordingly. Now, I mainly work with the smaller retailers, so that's why I'm coming with that kind of pragmatic approach. Ryan?
Well, the first thing to say is I don't think there is a perfect attribution model or a perfect attribution tool, and I don't think there ever will be. So if somebody claims to have that, they're lying. There will always be breakages in the journey. There, whether it's cross-device, whether it's logged in and logged out, whether it's people who remove their cookies, whatever it is, there will never be a perfect tool. But and I think it's basically a case of keeping it simple. So like I said, I agree with what Chloe said, is keep it simple in terms of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but then in the same as cross-device, explore that, whether it's once a month or once a quarter, run those numbers and spend that time looking at the full attribution and get a feel for how that potentially affects things. And it basically might mean that you then change your targets. So you change your last click ROI changes by 10%, because when you did some of the attribution analysis, you found actually you could afford to spend 10% more on that particular channel with that particular product set, because it's not really reporting on it in the way that you like in the last click model. Then continue reporting on it in the last click model for that whatever period of time is, knowing you've got that little bit of extra headroom, and then sit down and reanalyze again. But I think the thoughts of doing full-scale attribution modeling on a day-to-day basis for optimization is just too much data to think about. Mm-hmm.
The impact, to prove that the catalogue has an impact on web sales, I would be looking at when you know the catalogue landed, how that impacts on the direct traffic pattern, so what's coming in from direct and also what's coming in on branded search, as in your key core brand name, and I do it that way. Or alternatively, if you really want to get into it, you can do a full-on database matchback. So look at the addresses of the people you mailed and the addresses of the people who ordered in the given time frame and attribute that back. But I wouldn't do that every day. I'd do that probably once a season. But that's really effective. And if you're doing cold lists or inserts, cold lists, then that becomes an essential way of really understanding how those cold lists are performing.
Don't use a QR code.
God, no. Do we have any other questions from the floor? No? Well, Michelle just stole my other question for Ryan. So I'm out of questions too. And I'm looking for Mark. And I think Mark's run away, hasn't he, Ian? I think he has, because Mark was going to wrap up. But Mark's not here. Ian, do you want to wrap up or shall I wrap up? Shall I wrap up? Okay. I think it's been an awesome day from a DCA perspective, from everybody here's perspective, I hope. I've heard lots of good things going around. I've had a brilliant time. I've learned a lot. My head is going to be spinning, as I said earlier, as I head back on the train. I would like to put a plug in for the October conference, which the dates for which are on the bottoms of your sheets of paper. I think it's the 12th of October, I do believe, is the date. That's going to have quite a digital focus. So those of you who like the digital content today, there's going to be a lot more of that. Coming up, we're going to be talking content, social media, and those sorts of things in October, again in London. And I guess the only thing left to say is those of you sticking around for the dinner, have a marvellous time. Those of you who are heading home, do stick around for a bit, because I'm sure we'll all be chatting. And safe journeys, everybody. Thank you very much for coming.